Okay, so quick introduction again. Welcome to our first tantric class. And I was just telling my friends and participants here just a little bit of the program, how we're going to do it. I've sort of done a lot of these sutra videos over the last few years and recording them and having classes, and I've tried to do that weekly. So this one here, just because the way my work schedule is going, I've tried to pick a day, keeping with the old day there, Saturday morning. That would work for people out east and out west. Of course, it's very difficult, and I'm going to send out the recording as well. So I think I'd like to do basically one of these classes a month, and then one class. It doesn't have to be an hour long. I'll schedule it like on a Saturday. Again, I'm basically usually working 2 weeks a month and then off 2 weeks a month. So it'll be basically two classes a month. I might actually record classes when I'm away and give more material, and then the discussion class, the second class of the month, you can listen to the record and we can talk. So I thought it would be nice to have a little bit more discussion, and then just the way my scheduling is. And I've got another retreat I'm doing. I just finished one. I'm going into another one this in February when I get back from work. So it's just what I'm just again just going from one to another. So just time wise, I'm a little busy. So like I said, we'll have one scheduled live class like this, or two scheduled live classes a month. One where it's teaching, and then second where it's going to be more of a Q&A and a discussion. And then, like I say, I might even add some recordings as well as when I'm away. I actually think sometimes it's fun to record when I'm different places. Just got to lay over. It's like, okay, I'm in Hong Kong, maybe I'll record a class. And that's to give you guys the material, but I sort of want, this will be different because we're starting Tantra, so it's completely different. So in the Gelug tradition, we always want to show Sutra and Tantra the same thing on one level, like they bridge, they go together, it's like two sides of the coin. But other traditions split them, and they'll say you've got open Sutric teachings and then Tantric teachings here. And both ways of looking at it are, of course, correct. And I think when you're splitting them, what people that sort of like that approach are saying is that it's two different outlooks or two different ways of using your mind, two different attitudes or views or what do we want to say. And I think that that's true. And, my wife, Christine, is a very advanced Taoist practitioner, Qigong practitioner and teacher, but I studied Qigong for many years as well with two of me. My one teacher is almost like my second mom in Toronto. And from a Taoist point of view, they always say that, the five elements, you've got earth, metal, water, wood, and fire. When you're doing Qigong, you work with your water, not with your wood. So or with your metal. Metal's all your feelings, water is all your chi and prana, and then wood is all your intellectual mind and ideas. And what she was saying, of course, in Western countries where we still have this Cartesian background, everyone's in their head all the time. And so me coming from my intellectual background, I was like that. So 20 years ago, Cadre like Dorothy would say, okay, Matthew, show us microcosmic orbit. So like a dummy would stand up in front of class and just say, okay, so first thing you have to do, then she's like, no, I don't want you to tell me about it. I want you to show me. I want you to do it. I'm like, okay, so the first, she's like, no, don't talk, don't think, do it. And I'd be like, oh my God, like, how do I do it? I don't do it. She's like, see, you can't do it. You can just talk about it, but you can't do it. And she's like, this isn't about explaining. It's not about thinking or like explaining it. It's about doing it. So Tantra is the same thing. My teacher, my root teacher, as a Rinpoche, he is always saying that, is that Sutra is intellectual and it's logical. We're reading books, we're debating, we're working out things in our head, we're talking to each other, we're going over stuff, we're having discussion groups, you're getting all these open teachings on Buddhism that way. Then when you go to Tantra, it's based entirely on faith, or you could use the word confidence. And the answers are in the practice themselves, in the doing. So it's no longer a place for intellectualism. So in the Gelugpa tradition, where all the tantras are laid out, you get like a very detailed instruction booklet. At the end of the day, it's your experience, and then it's like pragmatically going over your experience with your teacher that counts. And the answers are in your experience. And so what you'll see is that everyone will end up in some ways kind of having their not their own version of it. It's not so much like that, but your own experience, your own karma with the practice is in the end sort of how it's going to go. And that's the experiential quality of Tantra. And it might differ a little bit from what's in the books, as long as it's A-OK by your teachers, for instance. So that's why I wanted to leave enough room in this course basically to enough room to basically digest the material energetically. So rather than throwing, like you can get, like nowadays, everything's free online. Everything's on YouTube, everything's on TikTok. When my dear friend teacher Dave Gonzalez published his books, they're beautiful hardcover books. He said, I want them as books. I don't want them as PDFs because if anything happens to the internet or whatever, PDF digital formats decay over time when they're saved, these things will disappear from the. So I want hard copies. So, and, you know, they were, because it was a small press, they were like $50, $60 a book or something. I can't remember. And then, you know, within a year, not even that, you know, my friend in Toronto was like, dude, check this out. All of his books have been uploaded to the internet, scanned in as PDF. Again, whatever, that's okay. But I'm just saying that everything's available online. And so I want this to be more, you know, of a course where we'll go over the material once a month and then discuss. But I want you guys to really feel this stuff and go into a deeper level on it through your own experience. I don't know how long this course is going to take. We'll see. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. There's a number of books we have. But my aim of this course is to take people, and I know some of you have, looking at faces here, background in Tantra, and I've been practicing for a number of years. And again, take what you want, and you're more than happy. I'm not, you know, the big expert here. You're more than happy in the discussions to teach me or tell me your experience or share and add on stuff like this. You know, for me, these classes will be password protected on YouTube. So anyone who wants them, they can just get the password. I'm going to send that on email and watch it, just so it's not out there in the open. I'm not, for the first part of this course where we go over the books, I'm not going to be saying anything too secretive or so. But what I'd like to do as an aim of this course is take sort of a beginner's look at Tantra in the Gelugpa tradition. So there are many tantric systems, and there's even new stuff coming all the time, whatever. So in this context of Tantra, what we're looking at is from my experience practicing over like 30 years in the Gelugpa tradition. So in Tibet, like you've got Tantra in Japan in the Shingon and Tendai schools. I'm very close to the Shingon tradition, Japanese Vajrayana. I have a very strong karmic connection to that. You had Japanese, I should say, tantric schools in Korea at one point. Some of the Chinese schools now are a blend. They're Pure Land, but then they have Kriya Tantra elements within them, for instance. So there's many ways, many different traditions of this, all of it originally coming from India and from Buddha Shakyamuni, you know, 2,500 years ago. Right? Then there's all sorts of fake and made up stuff and whatever. I'm not a crusader, I'm not a Dharma police, but I don't care what people do. As Rinpoche says, karma takes care of itself. I'm not interested in debating people at this point in my life on what's real Tantra and what's fake Tantra. I'm just doing this, you know, my path, and I'm happy to share what I've learned from that. But in the context of Tibetan Buddhism, you've got two streams, I guess, of teachings coming in, tantric teachings into Tibet. So you have kind of like the original introduction of tantric Buddhism in the 9th century, in the 800s, at the time of King Trisong Detsen. This famous Lama, Shankar Shita, came and taught, as well as our great, what they call second Buddha, Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava. This ends up at that time founding what's called the ancient teachings, or first wave or Nyingma tradition of tantric, like sutric and tantric instruction. I'm not going to get on. Christina practiced many years in the Nyingma tradition. I love the Nyingma tradition, but it's a little bit different. And they have an oral tradition from the 9th century. They also have all their books. And then what they have is interesting. It's a very, very long story. But Guru Rinpoche, this great tantric master and second Buddha, before he left Tibet and left his students, him and one of his main students, Yeshe Sogil, she helped him. He kind of went into astral realm or trance. And then basically it's almost like sending time delayed emails, or like, you know, you're posting a YouTube video, but you're posting it to debut a week later or something like that. These are, of course, Tiramisu treasures. He sort of put these teachings that would be found by the reincarnated students of the first 25 students of his later, centuries later. So they'd have dreams, visions, or they'd find physical objects. You open them up, oh my goodness, there's all teachings. Guru Rinpoche left like a time capsule, family time capsule, or a time capsule under your school. And this would bring a new lineage of teachings. And so the Nyingma tradition is always being renovated and kind of like with new teachings being, tantric teachings being introduced, depending on these Theravada lineages. So that's one thing. So then in the 11th century, in the 1000s, you have what they call the Sarma tradition, or you have the second wave of introduction of Tantric Buddhism into Tibet. And this is in the sort of debut or foundations of the Sakya and Kagyu schools, where you have Tibetan masters going to study in India and then coming back, or some Indian masters coming to Tibet to teach. Mostly translators and people like us going to India to learn and then coming back and having their own students. Our tradition, well, my tradition, I'm working from the Gelug tradition in the 1400s. You have a very, very famous Tibetan sage, Tsongkhapa Losang, and he was sort of took all through his own experience, the tantric teachings, sutra teachings that were available at that time. He had Nyingma, Kagyu, and Sakya teachers, and then sort of founded his own school, right? The Gelug or Gandin or New Kadampa school, right? Based on his hero, who like Atisha Deepakar Vijayana was one of the great Indian teachers in the 11th century who came to Tibet to teach, founded the Kadampa school. So Tsongkhapa said, I want to be like him. Is kind of like a return to the roots, Atisha's roots, and the Nalanda school of Tantric Buddhism in India at the time, which was wiped out by the Muslim invasions and stuff. So anyway, that's where we have it. And then this school of Tantrism, famous for the Dalai Lamas and Panchen Lamas, came down to this present day. Where you have our teacher, as Rimshik, many teachers teaching it, as only Dalai Lama is still alive and teaching, and then people like us studying it. So the Tantra I'm teaching is within the Gelug tradition. So we're going to learn, there's basically 4 levels of Tantra that are taught. People only do about 2 of them. It's very different. Like in the Nyingma school, they talk about 9 levels, 9 yanas, right? So first 3 are sutra, and then wait a minute. First 3. Anyway, yeah. So the last 4, 9 yanas. So the first 3, I think, are sutra, and then you get, yeah. So then it's the 4 classes of tantra. Then the 4th class, Anuttara Yoga, is divided into 2, and then they have Dzogchen on top of that. So I'm not going to teach that way. So if you're in the Nyingma tradition practicing and you want to attend these classes, you can go right ahead. But you'll see that there's always sometimes a difference of emphasis or structure. So sometimes it can be a little bit confusing. So I'm just teaching that. The first part of this course basically will be open to anybody. You should technically eventually have some kind of tantric initiation, at least a lower level Kriya Tantra initiation. And then when we get into Kriya Tantra, you should have a Kriya Tantra empowerment, preferably by a Gelugpa Lama, even though Kriya Tantra, I think for the most part, it's the same if you practice in the other schools, Sakya, Kagyu, and Nyingma. So usually we always see from Tantra, if you're practicing the Sakya or Drikang Kagyu traditions, very, very similar to the Gelugpa tradition, for instance. Whereas if you're in the Jonang tradition, Nyingma, a little bit different. Anyway, so that's how I'd like to see for the course. Years ago, when I was studying with my dear friend, translator, and eventually monk David Gonzalez, he I've been studying Tantra with Saz Rinpoche since 1996, May 1996. And I was in the New Kadampa tradition before that for about a year and a half or so, and studying with them. But I was very fortunate to, in the early 2000s, maybe 2002, we moved to Vancouver from Toronto, 2001, 2002. I'd met someone I'd always heard about in Toronto through a few Buddhist friends who were part of the Montreal Sangha when Geshe Khenrab was still there before he passed away in 1993. And so I knew some of his students, and they talked about this young guy from Seattle who was this unbelievable yogi. And I was like, isn't that interesting? And I had some friends that knew him. So when two of our dear friends, best Dharma friends there, Bill and Chisako Wells, moved to Seattle, we went down to visit them. I think it might have been 2000, like again, 2002, let's say early. I can't remember now, it's been so long ago. But we were over there and they said, oh, do you know a guy called David Gonzalez? And I said, well, I've heard about him, kind of like in the Buddhist community in Toronto. It was kind of like the rumor, right? You hear about this guy. And they said, well, he just lives down the street. Do you want to go meet him? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Oh my God. So Christina and I went over, knocked on the door, and David was the sweetest guy. He's just maybe 5 years older than me, white guy, kind of looks like me a little bit. He had nicer hair. He had like kind of goatee and stuff. And he had this very soft, almost high-pitched voice. And he lived in this little old house in Fremont, Seattle. That was his aunt's house. And when she passed away, she gave it to him, which was so lucky because David didn't work. He was in permanent retreat, right, basically. So anyway, he knocks on the door. It's like, hey, he's like, hey, I'm David, I'm like this. And I said, oh, I'm Matthew, and I'm one of his Asper Pache students. And do you know so-and-so? And we all knew the same people. So right away, I was like, and at that time, whatever, I've got an ego. I still have an ego. But I thought I knew a lot, right? I thought I was a hot shot. And then I walk in the house, and it's like an old Tibetan temple, like I'd never seen a house like that. It's basically like he just lived in a temple that he made up for himself. So he was fluent in Tibetan, had all the Tibetan texts on the wall, all in the silk, and there were just texts everywhere and tantric implements everywhere and statues everywhere. And he took us to the shrine room, and the shrine room was just like, it's unbelievable. And the energy was just like a beating heart, the house. It was just vibrating. And I was like, oh my God, okay, master, this is the real deal. And then that was interesting is like our friend said, oh, David meditates, I think it was, let's say 6 hours a day. And of course, people always tell you stuff like that. No, 8 hours a day, because you meditate about 2 hours in the evening. And we're like, whatever that is. He reads a few prayers, sits down and says mantras when he watches TV. And then when we got to know him, it's like, oh my God, he really does. So he would get up at 6 a.m, go into session, come down at 9, make a little breakfast, go back up, he'd be done about 12:30 or 1. Then he had the rest of the afternoon. Then she was translating text, but we could hang out. We'd go to the park together and go shopping. And he was just like a totally normal guy. You couldn't pick him out of a crowd. Just dressed like normal, like we all dressed kind of like Banana Republic, kind of like, like people back then. And he had his benefactor, who was the wife of the second in command of Microsoft. Her name was Susan. Still around, I guess, but she would give him money because he didn't work because he was in retreat all the time. He hadn't worked since maybe the mid 1990s. He was a contractor before that. So, and then he would practice about an hour or two at night. So he was doing these incredibly advanced meditations, and he not only spoke Tibetan that he learned in a year, all the old texts. And he's just an incredible autodidact and encyclopedia. It's like anytime I had a question, I'd call him on the phone, over years. I'd say, David, I want to do it. Just hang on, let me check. And then call back, can I call you back in 15 minutes? I'm like, okay. And he'd go through all these texts, and then like even on a video call, he'd be showing me stuff. I was like, you're amazing. And he's like, there's this 15th century text by, second Panchen Lama. You look in the index, and there's this book here, and then he'd like whatever he knew everything. It was just really, really, really remarkable. So anyway, where I'm going with this, I could sit here all day and tell you all the stories. But the thing is, he's a very advanced tantric practitioner, so he's very, very psychic. And he knew the answers experientially. So it's not like me where whatever, you get a book. What's this, Matthew? Well, the Dalai Lama says, he could ask a question as he say, oh, when you do this, this will happen. And then when this happens, you have a choice to either do this or that. Don't do the first thing or whatever, right? Because you'll get some kind of health problem or whatever. So it's like, wow. So he knew all this stuff. And you can just feel like when you're around the Lama, all the energy, they're not a normal person, and they're not, you're getting sort of a direct introduction to this kind of stuff. So he taught us, so what happened, where I'm going with this, is that over years we studied with him. We used to drive down to Seattle almost every month and spend the weekend. We'd sleep. His garage was a little temple. And when his teacher was the former tutor to His Holiness Trijang Rinpoche, who was the Dalai Lama's junior tutor. When Genlos and Jeffo would come and teach, he would teach in the garage, set up like a temple. So we would just sleep on the floor in the garage. So we would come in and then be around his kitchen table, Christina and I and our friends Bill and Cheese, sometimes another one of his friends. He only had maybe 5 students. That's the thing, is you start to see with these people, it doesn't have to be where you've got thousands of followers on X or whatever, like 10 million people like you on TikTok. You know, David had maybe 5 or 6 people. And the only reason anyone knows him now is because all the books he published, because people wouldn't know any of that. But over the years, what he decided to do, he's like, let me teach you all the tantric rituals. Let me teach you structurally how to do this. So yes, Master, thank you, because nowadays this stuff isn't taught. And even at the time, what he said is his teacher, Genlos and Chefu knows the Dalai Lama, mentioned that David's learning this and that. He ended up having an ordination name, Losang Sering, but I still call him David anyway, because I knew him that long as a layperson. But the Dalai Lama said, oh, I'm so happy David is teaching Kriya Tantra and this stuff, because this is going to be lost soon, this stuff, because no one's studying it anymore. So David taught us how to do fire pujas, how to do consecrations, all this stuff. And then most of all, he started giving us a class that we did around his kitchen table on the Narim Chenmo. So Lama Tsongkhapa did the famous Lam Rim Chenmo, which is all the sutra teachings in Lam Rim, in the famous 3-volume set you can give, and then send all the Dalai Lamas and Panch Lamas have given commentaries on that. So we've done that in classes I've given where we do Lam Rim. But the other book that he did, which is just as good, just as famous, and no one reads, is his Narim Chenmo, which is all the Tantra teachings. So basically, he published tons of stuff. He did 2 books, the Sutra book and the Tantra book. So what I find always amazing, even in the Gelugpa tradition, is we're learning Tantra, this and this, no one's even published the Narim Chenmo as a self-standing book, even today. And no one gives teachings on it, even today. They'll give teachings on parts of it, but no one will just... So about 20 years ago, a friend of mine was in the class at Institute Lama Tsongkhapa at FPMT course, where they actually went through the Narim Chenmo with Geshe, I think it's Losang Gyatso, I can't remember his name. He was at the Italy Center. So I have the English sort of commentary and printout of that. But on the whole, the book, when you get the Narim Chenmo, it's just in a series of books that Jeffrey Hawkins and the Dalai Lama translated. And some of the books are quite different. And then the last book, so he's done one, I'll just show you, because this is what we're going to be learning. The first one's called Tantra in Tibet. So I'm called Narim Chenmo. How would you even know? Interesting. Second one is called Deity Yoga. This is the one we'll end up studying. It's not even listed as part of the Narim Chenmo. Then this one's called Yoga Tantra. Then there's a hardcover book from a different series, which is the Anuttara Yoga part. And then they haven't even translated, like that I know of. There isn't even a book out on all the completion stage. So it's very strange. I don't know why no one's done this. So what David did is he taught us, I ended up getting teachings from him right to the end, which is really, really lucky. So I have a million notes. And I would like over years to gradually pass this on to people. I don't have kids. I'm an old man now. And at any point, with my crazy lifestyle, cholesterol and high blood pressure, I might be leaving, hopefully for the Pure Lands, if not stuck back in this place, with some dead-end job again. So I would like to pass this stuff on. So what I thought in particular would be nice is for us to study Kriya Tantra together, which is the first level of Tantra. So this is a great place to start. So there's 4 classes of Tantra: Kriya, Charya, Yoga, and Highest Yoga Tantra, or Anuttara Yoga. Most of the 2 middle classes of Tantra, even if they made it to Tibet, no one translated them, no one practices them. There's only one Yoga Tantra, the Vairochana Tantra, Kunrig, which is huge in Japan. So in Japan, Shingon Buddhism is the 3rd level, which is Tantric Yoga Tantra, and there are masters of that. Highest Yoga Tantra went to Tibet, but ended up producing a lot of sex cults, and so the Japanese government, with the Shingon tradition behind them, banned it, and it went underground. It's still around, but it went underground. It's kind of too bad. So you don't get the highest level of Tantra in Japan taught openly. Whereas in Tibet, you've got the 4 classes, but Chari and Yoga Tantra, no one does. Even Vairocana practice, no one really does that unless you're like a monk because it's so complicated. So what's popular is highest Yoga Tantra, what they call Mahan Anu Tantra in the Nyingma tradition. It's called, so we call it Anuttara Yoga. Also, the 2-stage zone is generation stage and completion stage. And then Kriya Tantra. So Kriya Tantra, a lot of the initiations you get a Chandrazika initiation, you get a Green Tar initiation, Manjushri initiation, they are at a Kriya Tantra level. So probably in India, though I don't know, let's say 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, there was the idea that you would go up the schools. So Kriya Tantra is first year university, Chari Tantra second year, Yoga Tantra third year, and finally you get your honors in arts, and that's Anuttara Yoga. That's kind of how people see it, but I don't know if it was actually taught that way. But there is sort of a serial or linear development through the Tantras that way. So it's a nice place to start. I'm not going to say I'm qualified to run around and teach highest Yoga Tantra. I'm not a Lama. I haven't been given. Of course, I could be a self-made Lama, but I don't want to go that route. But even though I've been teaching at Rinpoche Center since 1999, and I do teach Tantra, I'm not Lama Matthew or the very venerable His Holiness, His Divine Grace Matthew Richards, as much as I'd like to be. I haven't been given a title like that. So I feel confident to teach the very lower forms of Tantra, because the Kriya Tantra form, especially for beginners, it's getting your driver's license with the big red L at the car. It's like you're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to screw yourself up. You're not going to get the same kind of emotional, psychological obstacles that you get when you've done higher forms of Tantra. It's a perfect place to start. So here's the thing, is that how Kriya Tantra is taught now, it's not really taught ritualistically anymore. And this is what's actually dying out, at least in the Gelugpa tradition, and I'm more than happy for people to prove me otherwise. But from my experience over the last number of years, no one's really this, especially now where people don't have the attention span anymore. So David Gonzalez taught us all the traditional form of doing Kriya Tantra, and that's what I'd like to teach you guys, so you can do these retreats. And the thing with Kriya Tantra, actually called Action Tantra, is that if you do the ritualistic Kriyas or actions, you will get the result. You will get the result. Some kind of thing will happen at the end of your retreat, your permission retreat with the fire puja. You will get some kind of attainment. And why that's important is that it produces faith. You have confidence. You switch to more of a tantric way of thinking where the answers you're looking for, you're getting in your own experience. You don't have to run and ask somebody or run and read a book. So it'd be nice to take you to that place with this course. That's how I see this course. That's how I'd like to do it. But beforehand, we have to do a little bit of an introduction, because if I just throw Kriya Tantra guys with the rituals, it will just be like old days Catholic Church, the 1940s, where they do everything in Latin. You don't speak Latin, you don't know what it is. And it's like, well, I just know the priest does this. I don't know. Like, it'll be like that. You won't understand the logic to it. So like I said in my email, I'd like to start with 2 books that we can go through that'll give you a really good foundation. I'm assuming everyone has a degree of foundation in Sutra, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But we'll need to do this a little bit of an introductory class. So the first book I still love Lama Yeshe's book, Introduction to Tantra, A Vision of Totality. Because it is Tantra, and this is an older edition, as you can see. I don't think the book looks like this anymore. But it's still one of the best books I know on Tantra. It's just fabulous. It's an excellent introduction. The end of the book has stuff on highest Yoga Tantra. You can read it, but I'm not going to teach on it because I just want to teach on Kriya Tantra. Maybe one day in the future we can look at that stuff. The other one is dear teacher in the UK, is quite old now, Rob Priest, who's also a Jungian psychotherapist. My teacher, of course, Zaza Rinpoche, went to teach over there in Cornwall. This book is called The Psychology of Buddhist Tantra. It used to be called The Alchemical Buddha. It's excellent because it's a good for more North American or Western people, because it gives a little bit more of a psychological reading on some of this stuff. Because once we go into Kriya Tantra, It's all confidence and based. In a lot of ways, I can call it, because it's so popular now. It's all, they say in Japan, Miku, it's all magic. We're going to be doing magic together. So once we're doing magic, you don't ask questions anymore. Like Rinpoche says, you do Aikido, people are throwing you, putting you into joint locks, no questions, no, hey, how to just do it. Once we're doing magic, no more questions. Not, does this magic wand really work? At that point, we're just going to do it together. So I want to lay everything out with people so we can get to that point and work on that level. So these two first books are really, really good ones to work with. And then the one we will get into is all this. Tantra Tibet is just mostly an introduction by Jason Camp. I'll give a little bit on it, but it's actually, the book itself isn't very long. You don't have to get it, but the one eventually that maybe if you want to study Kriya Tantra is excellent. There's actually, they might even have Charya Tantra in here, I don't know, is called Deity Yoga by the Dalai Lama and Jeffrey Hopkins. This is the old edition. There's a newer edition. Oh, this is from 1981. So eventually we'll get that. It has nice pictures and we'll go through that book. That's what I'd like to do. And even before that, I want to use my teacher's book, which is David Gonzalez's book, which I don't even know if you can get anymore. It's called Blissful Ascent to Swift Enlightenment. He always had the great titles. A Guide to the Four Classes of Tantra. Of course, we'll just do the stuff on Kriya Tantra in here. This is from Decheling Press, which I don't even know if it works anymore. When David, before he passed away, set up a nonprofit text, like publishing company for his books, Decheling Press Online, and then after he passed away, he really didn't have any students. I don't know if anyone took care of it. I've had people, I had a guy from Indonesia writing me, hey, I heard you're David's friend, you know if you could still buy his books? And I said, I don't know. I said, I have them all, I don't buy them. And he's like, look, the website doesn't work, I don't think I can get these books. So what's happened is Wisdom FPMT has been publishing some of his books over time now as nice hardcovers, but I don't know if they published this one. I don't. But it doesn't matter because I'm going to teach from it anyway, so it'll be a little bit of a transmission. Okay, that's all I have to say. If you can believe it, this is kind of just like an introduction a little bit. So the next time, like I say, I'll probably do some recordings. I've got some really long flights in a week's time. And what I'd like to do is, in our class, is unlike today, because I just wanted to do this as an introduction, I'll start with a meditation, more of a tantric meditation, do the presentation, and then leave time for questions at the end. And like I say, after the subsequent class will be more of a discussion of the material. If you would like, of course, you can keep doing your own practice or do your own research a little bit on the side and then bring questions into this. And then we'll see, we do have enough material, but at the end of it, I would like, again, people to be able to do a Kriya Tantra kind of on their own. And if people do want a Kriya Tantra to do it on their own, we can set that up for you. Does anyone have any questions? So like I say, this will go out as a recording and sort of a password protected video on YouTube. I will send the password out. You can share that with anyone who wants to see these videos with the right intention and everything else. I just didn't want any of the stuff wide open on YouTube, like I said. Any questions at all, or sharing, or?
Matthew? I just wanted the last name of Rob, the Psychology of Buddhist.
Oh, Rob Priest. So it's he's got even some stuff. So PREECE. Now this is. Yeah, so he's actually put out, and you can get them as PDFs. He's actually put a lot of books out. They're all excellent. At the end of the day, you can just read them on your own. But he's got two newer books on Tantra that I haven't read. Anyway, again, you can buy them to download them from Amazon as PDFs. I'm sure they're fabulous. They might even be better than that one. I don't know. And if they are, you certainly, in question and answer, you can tell me what you think if you've read them, or questions you have, or things you want to share. But I know he was a longtime student of Lama Yeshe in the 1970s, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and his explanations and teachings are just really, really good, and I trust the guy with this stuff. So this one's an excellent introduction. And it's just a little bit of a different way of looking at things compared to, let's say, Lama Yeshe or some more. Like, I've got all the traditional stuff, and David would teach us in a very traditional way, very orthodox way. And so sometimes that works for people, sometimes not so much, right?
Matthew,
Yes.
did you say that somebody had published more recently some of David's books?
Yes, and that's Wisdom, just the
Wisdom.
British publication. So if you just go on their website and type in David Gonzalez, you'll see that they've been doing it. And I'm happy. There's a long, very sad, unfortunate story. I'm not going to get political between David and FPMT a little bit with that. I don't want to. If you're around long enough in religion, there's always a lot of bad story, whatever. You're always caught in the middle of stuff. But anyway, I'm just happy the books are being published, because if Decheling Press doesn't work anymore, and it probably doesn't, this stuff will just get lost. And so Wisdom, I think it was one of, there was a young Tibetan man called Guru Dorje or something like that. I can't remember. The last couple of years of David's death sort of became his friend. And then I think he's the one that's been able to sort of set this up where Wisdom's publishing David's books, Losang Sereng's books. So I'm very happy about that. That's very, very good news. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning, Matthew.
Nice to see you, by the
I'm
way.
curious as to, it's really good to see you as well, and Happy New Year.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to why the tradition, like why Kriya Yoga it's been dying out, like, or yeah, just like what are the, why, what's been happening? Do you
Well,
have a
there's
sense
two
of that?
things. Like, there's an obvious, like Tantra. This is a debate, and we don't know. I mean, I'm not, like, one thing I always found, it's not as bad. Well, maybe it is as bad, but when I started, you get all sorts of idiots like me pontificating, giving their own interpretations, very superstitious views on Tibetan culture, or it's the status of Tantra in the world, this and that. So I don't want to add to that kind of stuff in saying it. But a number of teachers have said that Tantra is dying out in the world, like real Tantra. And so, when I was in NKT, whatever years ago, I remember Geshe Rinpoche would say, in the future, there'll be no Tantra and even no Dharma, but there'll still be all the books, all the statues. You can go to the temples, but people won't have the experiences. They won't have the realization. They don't know how to do it. So at that point, my friend would always call it like Star Wars Buddhism. Tantric Buddhism becomes like a Star Wars movie, or like a fairy tale or a legend, kind of like the martial arts movies where everyone's kind of like, thank you, Alyssa, for posting that. Hopefully that works as a link to by the book. So anyway, you have all this stuff, but people don't know how to do it. Just like all those Taoist books, Christina has this one book. As a friend of mine gave it to me. Actually, I still have to read it. Anyway, he's a very famous martial artist in the United States. He was from China and then taught in the United States in the 70s and 80s, I think. But how he grew up in China before the Chinese Revolution, the communist takeover. So at the end of the Qing dynasty, he's very old. They were his teachers, and it was literally out of a Star Wars movie, like what they could do. Like, I don't even know if people could do that. Like, he had one of his teachers, Christine was telling me, that all he did was yin practice. Everything was yin. So he'd been in what they call in Tibetan was like a dark room. He'd been in absolute pitch black darkness most of his life. He's completely clairvoyant, can read books, do everything. He's just in the black. Then it's like the other guy does all yang. It's all bright. And then there's one guy who's a frog who can do all these things, and he acts and looks and hops around like a frog. Like, just very strange, right? You don't even get people like that anymore. But the point is that they know that's an unbroken lineage of teaching, so they have all that. Whereas even if you want to do frog Tai Chi or whatever, you don't know how to do it. It's just your interpretation from getting what you have online. So Kriya Tantra, how people practice it nowadays, is a stepping stone to get to the higher advanced Anuttara Yoga stuff. So it's just like, okay, I know I should do first year university, but I think I should just go right away to my doctorate program. Like there's people like that. Nowadays, Kriya Tantra, no one actually gets into it. No one studies it. They get an empowerment. They do a few Tara mantras. Okay, give me Dzogchen, I'm ready. And so people don't go in any depth to the practice. And then the other thing is that, at least from how I know and what David taught us, is that no one does all the old Kriya Tantra rituals. And there's a reason for it. It's because they're so difficult. Kriya Tantra, because it's all based on ritual, it's all different mudras and sort of a whole lifestyle that you have to live if you're going that way. So, for instance, being vegetarian, technically wearing all white, it's almost like the Kundalini yoga, the HHH, whatever, Yogi Bhajan's people, where everyone's in white with the turban. This is kind of probably in the old days how you had to be as a Kriya Tantra person in India. Well, no one's going to do that nowadays. And you'll see when we study Kriya Tantra, it's very overwhelming. That doesn't mean you can't do it, just takes work. It's just like learning another language or picking up a sport. I didn't know, like I was to say, Rinpoche, he loves snowboarding. He doesn't do it anymore. But he's like, everyone snowboards except for me. I'm going to teach myself how to snowboard. And he says the hardest thing about snowboarding, first, is you're always falling. So you're always falling, everybody's laughing at you, right? So it's hard. So Kriya Tantra is a little like that in the sense that there's a bit of a learning curve to get into it with the rituals. But if you do the rituals, it works. Something happens. If you do Medicine Buddha at the end of the retreat, you have healing power. You do Manjushri at the end of Kriya Tantra retreat, you've got wisdom. You have a more of an in-depth understanding of things. So it's really quite amazing that way. It's also, for the permission retreats of Kriya Tantra, you have to do all the rituals and the mantra counts different. So in higher Tantra, there's sort of a flat rate of 100,000 mantras that you do. Anuttara Yoga, you do usually after that what they call wisdom descending mantras. So that's a lot of mantras, right? So for an example, for Chittamani Tara, Mind Jewel Tara from the Takpu Gargi Wangpo visionary lineage, that form of green Tara, 100,000 mantras, 10,000 wisdom descending wisdom shower mantras, and you're done the retreat. If you do Kriya Tantra, green Tara mantra, it's 1,000,000 mantras you have to count. 1,000,000. Because it's 100,000 for each syllable of the mantra. There's 10 syllables in that mantra, you do 1,000,000. That's a long retreat. Now what happens? You do that at the end, ding, Tara power's coming right through you, you're channeling it, right? But if you're like us, you got a family, you got kids, you got to show up to the Royal Bank to work at 9 in the morning. You're like, oh my God, how do I get 1,000,000 mantras in here? Then you have to take time off work, and then you get fired, or somehow you have to do it every day. When you get home from work, put the kids to bed. Oh my God, it's 10 o'clock. I got to get up at 5. Well, how am I going to do this? But you see, that's why it's difficult to do Kriya Tantra nowadays, and why it's dying out, is that the prerequisites are difficult, Eduardo. It takes patience. Like that retreat, and that's just green Tara. I mean, that'd be maybe 2-3 month retreat to get all those mantras done. Like David told me to do, and he did the white Tara longevity retreat. So he did that's 1,000,000 Tara mantras, then you have to do 300,000 of the long white Tara mantra. So that's a lot. And every day you have to start with the ritual bath. You have to wear white. You have to be vegetarian. You have to do all the mudras. You do then you do the fire puja. But he had the one I've told people he was dying of cirrhosis of the liver from hepatitis C, from a blood transfusion from a motorcycle accident in the late 90s. And at one point, like, I'm not going to get into it, but he kept having dreams of his lamas telling him to do white Tara retreats, so we did it. But at one point he went in to the doctors. We had a good laugh. He was very sick. This is just maybe 2-3 years before he died. But they did a blood test, and he was waiting in the office, and they came in, and he said they were as white as a wall, these doctors in Washington. And they're like, this can't be right. We'll run the test again. They run the test, they come back. They're like, this can't be right. This can't be right. And they're like, he's like, what, what's going on? And they said, you have no white blood cells, none. And he's like, well, what's, and he's like, technically you're dead. You're dead. It's impossible. You have no immune system. You're dead. And they're like, you're sitting here talking to us. And he's like, I don't know, man, like what? And they're just like, well, come back for the treatment next week. And he did. So he told me that, like at his place, we're having lunch. He's like, can you believe that? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can believe it because it's you. Like if it's me, I'm dead. And he's like, it's that white Tara retreat. Like I've got the longevity CD. Technically I'm dead, but I'm still alive. And he's like, that's why my gurus told me to do that retreat. It's technically I'm supposed to be dead. And then his immune system bumped back up. But that's the power of having done that retreat. So I push Kriya Tantra on people a little bit if they can do it, because not that you'll have magical realizations like that, but something like that will happen. The magic will happen, and then you'll believe it. And then you'll want to do more of it. And you'll want to do more and more Tantra, and you'll get more of Buddhist experiences and realizations through it. Cool. Okay, so if no other questions, we can maybe wrap it up. Anything else? Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for coming. Nice to see everybody's faces here. So what I'll do, like I have to go to work. I'm happy. I should be going to Beijing, first time since before COVID, to go to the Big Lama Temple there. I usually go there for Chinese New Year. I'm very, very happy to be going. So we'll see. So anyway, so what I'll do is I'll record at least one session and send it out so you guys can watch it. Well, I'll just start getting into the Lama Yeshe book right now and start going through that so you can follow through it. It's most of the book, like I say, the stuff at the very end there, starting probably a little bit after page 100 is more high yoga tantra. You can read it, but you don't have to read it. And I'll start going through this book. And like I say, the next one we'll do live, maybe first part of February or so, will be just a discussion group where we go over the material. Okay, so let me just press stop here.